So today we're going to continue to learn some more trigonometry. Specifically, we're going to talk about cosine. Cosine of an angle is equal to the ratio of the adjacent side to the hypotenuse. Now when we talk about adjacent is a leg of a right triangle. It's the leg of the right triangle that is next to the angle that we're working with. So remember, opposite the right angle is called the hypotenuse, always. Opposite the angle that we're working with, angle A in this case, is called opposite. And next to the angle that we're working with is called the adjacent. Cosine of an angle is always equal to adjacent over hypotenuse. So let's take a look at a couple examples where we have to find an angle measure using cosine. Here we're asked to use cosine to find the measure of an angle and round our answer to the nearest hundredth. So in both these examples we're going to be using cosine because we're working with the adjacent side, the leg that's next to the angle that we're using, and the hypotenuse. And same thing in B. In B, we're working with angle A. We're working with the leg next to angle A, so that's called the adjacent, and the hypotenuse, which is the side opposite the right angle. So whenever we use cosine, we write down the cosine formula, which is cosine of the angle equals adjacent over hypotenuse. And this problem right here, I labeled the adjacent side, or the 7 as adjacent, and the 9 as the hypotenuse. When I substituted, I rewrote this as the cosine of the angle equals 7/9, where 7's adjacent, 9's hypotenuse. To solve for the angle measure, I take the inverse cosine of both sides. When we write that, we write it on the left side of each side of the equation. I have to solve this with my calculator in degree mode. Remember, degree mode can be found by pressing the mode button on your calculator, highlighting degree, and hitting enter. If you don't have a TI-84 calculator, there are buttons sometimes where you press mode until you get DEG lit up. When I take the inverse cosine of 7/9 and round to the nearest hundredth, I end up with 38.94 degrees for the measure of angle A. In part B, again, we have the adjacent, we have the hypotenuse, so we write the cosine formula. Cosine of the angle equals adjacent over hypotenuse. The adjacent has a measure of 4, the hypotenuse has a measure of 10. To solve for A, I take the inverse cosine of both sides. So I end up with the measure of angle A equals 66.42 degrees.